Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and in one of my recent Klein videos, somebody posted in the comments a question that I thought was kind of interesting. It was, what's with Klein's war on metrics? And it kind of stopped me, and I thought, well, really, is there a war? I mean, it feels like that sometimes, because when Klein releases some new tools or tool sets like this, there is no metrics in this whole thing, in this one. There is in this one. But what that got me thinking about was, is it really a war on metrics? It can't be, because Klein is not leading any charge. Klein is reactionary. Klein is supporting the trades, and the trades support the infrastructure that we build. And many times infrastructure has a long shelf life. And so the initial components of that infrastructure, whatever they are, whether it's a battleship or a high voltage power line or a home, they end up using whatever was popular at that time or traditional, and then Klein builds the tools that support that. So anyone who works on vintage cars or in aviation, vintage US anything, is probably going to be deep into the SAE environment. And if you're a DIYer, that's often the case. A lot of appliances use SAE stuff. Home stuff uses SAE, or fractional or the US system. And in fact, if you go to a hardware store and you're looking for bits and pieces, it's very difficult sometimes to find much of a selection in metrics. Maybe high-end stainless steel things, but a lot of it, all of the lower grade stuff is almost always SAE, so you end up using SAE stuff, which is why I think wrenches like this one are so popular. But if you notice that, this is a Klein Tools wrench, and it is metric there. It's SAE on this side. Now, I did a video recently about this one. This is that insulated Klein 1000 volt rated, and it does not have the metrics on the other side. That got me wondering, how come? And by the way, I really blew a great opportunity, because I did show this wrench, and somebody pointed out very thoughtfully in the comments that I forgot its main feature is this, which is a way of operating the tool or opening it from underneath whatever, I guess somebody said it was like a tactile indicator or something. Or what I call the handguard. You're under that spot where this could arc or jump the gap and zap you. But I have not used this on anything hot, and I tend to use it exactly the same way I use all of the conventional ones, just wedging it on there. And I think I even pointed that out in my video, that it wasn't the smoothest system, but it's probably the safest system. So that just goes back to that. But here's an interesting one. I don't think I've ever owned a metric drill bit. Maybe some converted ones, and I'll talk about conversions in a second, but this is a Klein drill bit here, and it had never occurred to me to get one that actually lists metrics. Instead, I'm perfectly fine with fractional. That's kind of all I know. I mean, I know metric sizes, but for drill bits, I always am grabbing fractional, and I've never questioned it. Kind of odd. But anyway, what Klein has here are a couple of new Connect S systems. So I'm sort of showing these, but also layering it across this metric concept. This one is all SAE. It's a simple little system, and honestly, this got me thinking, and I'm going to talk to Klein about it. I want an overlanding kit. I want one of these bright orange kits that is decked out for more overlanding things. So I've got to figure out what exactly that means, but these kits are so handy. They're solid. It's in a good case. You know when you've got all the pieces. But anyway, this one, obviously drive handle and the short pass-through ratchet, a set of a set of flip sockets here on a 1/4 inch hex, and then everything from 9/16 down to pop this guy out, this 5/16, which if you work on appliances, you're going to want a 1/4, but there it is up on the front end. Real simple design, a lot of handy things, turning this into a bit driver, either one of them, extensions. I mean, that's really what this Connect system is all about. But where's the metrics? And it turns out there's also this one. This one here, by the way, is a 23 piece. The part number on that, if you're interested, usually it's printed on it. Maybe it's on the inside. Right there, we got it. It's 65301 Connect system, but they also have a 33 piece version, and what they've added here is a set of metric sockets, all the way from this small little 7 up through 14. Good complement of bits, handle, extension, and then your SAE versions with that same handle. And I did notice in this kit, I can even go up to this 14 here, and I can drop it on, and if I wanted to leave it, they've actually got the cutout here, so I can snap that down and close it. So it opens up another venue where I don't have to pull the socket off if I've got something that I use all the time. But really slick system. I want to build an overlanding kit that's in one of these that does kind of what I need it to for. Maybe it could be even vehicle specific, and then you can have a birthday present. Oh, I see you got a Toyota Tacoma. Here's your Toyota kit, or your F-150 kit, or your Jeep kit. And you're going to need it if you got a Jeep. Sorry about that. But anyway, going back to the metric side. Now, the metrics have been around for a long time. In fact, the U.S. was one of the first to sign the meter treaty back in like 1875, and in fact it's been legal. You know, you'll get people who say it's illegal in the US to use the metric system. Well, it has, it was prior to, I think it was 1864 when it got signed, or 1856. Otherwise, yeah, go for it. But there are some things where tradition just has us using SAE. We're just so used to it. And the infrastructure demands it, and switching things over is a little crazy. And one of the keys is, actually, the only people I think really who have a war on the metric system are elementary school math teachers, because that's really where they could actually make an impact in America anyway, as far as teaching the metric system, but they don't seem to want to, and test people don't want to do it. But anyway, what we've got is a metric set here of the connects with flip sockets from 18 on down to 8. And one of the things I started thinking about, again, here with the metric side, is you really shouldn't convert. And that's sort of known if you want to memorize systems. But the problem with conversion is you can make mistakes. Now, a 12 millimeter is a 12 millimeter, but where is it in here? I could mix this up and say, oh, is that a 3/8 or a 7/16? And remember, we're only going to 16ths here. We could go to 32nds or 64ths. There's no end, or 128ths. Usually we turn to decimals almost at that point, you know, thousandths of an inch or something. But if there's anything we know, it's that Americans aren't all that great with decimals, and they're even worse with fractions. So what we want to do is use the right tool. And so if you got a 12, use a 12. If you start doing conversions, yes, you can do it. It's totally safe, saves people, but we can also make mistakes. Obviously, we crashed a space probe on Mars because we did a bad conversion. You know, simplified, basically, it's like miles per hour versus kilometers per hour. It's a lot more complex than that, but that was what happened. I mean, that's almost a 2-to-1. You know, kind of a mess. And I'm used to different speeds. I mean, I don't live terribly far from Canada, and, you know, road signs start converting between kilometers and miles per hour. And, in fact, I live near the Idaho National Engineering Lab, INEL, National Engineering Lab, quite a while ago, and the roadsides there were both metric and SAE, or I guess miles per hour. And then they changed pretty much to straight metric as you got closer, and the reason was because so many people from other countries were working there. But anyway, going back to the metric side, I think Klein is basically servicing the industry, and the industry in most cases may, for the target audience, might be going after the kind of the SAE crowd, the fractional crowd. So that's where they start. But once they get it going, it's easy to make the metrics. But I'd love to have the sales data on metrics versus SAE, given their clientele. Now, if they made a bike toolkit, which is also on my list from Klein, because it's such great stuff for you know, organizing and just going after very specific things, you could load this up with exactly what you need for the average quality bike. It's going to be all metric or Torx. And Torx is like its own thing. That's not a metric or a SAE, so, you know, there's I guess a third option. But anyway, that whole comment got me thinking about it. Klein, and like many companies, are servicing the people who service the infrastructure. So whatever the infrastructure is, whether it's plumbing, whether it's electrical, whether it's woodworking, whether it's automotive or aviation, whatever, they're going to have their own set of standards that are pretty common, and even the measurements, it might be, feet per mile or inches per foot or something like that. But also I found it interesting that there are lots of ways that we move back and forth, between US or SAE measurements and the metric system without any hesitation. Like, what's the knife blade? Tell me about that. Oh, it's 3.5 inches long and 4 millimeters thick. Wow, cool. It's because when you get into the sizes of the thicknesses of blades, non-metric, fractions of an inch, unless it's a 1/4 inch or more, and I do have knives with a 1/4 inch, and that's pretty substantial. But otherwise, it's simply, you use what works. And whether that's in volume, gallons, or liters, whether that's in length, whether that's in weight, mass. I mean, honestly, it's kind of fun when you start looking at the details. But overall, we use what works. There is a lot of hype about switching to the metric system. In some ways, it's kind of an ugly system. I mean, what are you going to get, a 1/4 pound, or what's that going to be? In poetry, you got miles to go before I sleep. That sounds great, but kilometers to go. It just sucks all the life out of poems. But for tools, I would like to see plenty of metric. I mean, that's almost all I encounter on new stuff, but anything old, household, a lot of appliance stuff, I mean, I'm just running into tradition, and tradition is SAE. So I see why Klein would launch something in SAE and then maybe backfill it with metrics, or even see if there's a requirement. Where would they even use it? If you designed this, for an airplane toolkit, what metrics would you need? And I know I have some aviation mechanics out there. Maybe they can answer that. But every time I do something, specifically with metric or SAE, I get the comments about, well, there's nothing metric on these planes, or, whatever it is. Maybe it's a US made plane. I don't know. And that's tradition. It simplifies things. Other things, I've heard ball bearings are pretty much standard as SAE, although I do see millimeter-sized ones, but sometimes those are just like sloppy conversions. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on all this. But I don't think Klein has a war on metrics. I think Klein is servicing the industry. And that's what the industry asks for. And then maybe after it's out, or maybe they, in anticipation from what they've learned in the past, they just go ahead and say, okay, we'll come out with a metric version as well, or we'll also supply the metrics. And then see what happens, because a lot of times people want them, but then this is what the real world is. The real world's, often running into this SAE stuff, even though what we think we want is the metrics, but that might be wish casting. I wish it was all this simple, but this is what I always run into. I don't know. Share your thoughts, please. And with that, Doc out.